Let's focus on one company, Mindtree, from the IT space, which has not gathered that much attention considering the amount of interest which has taken place, especially in the cyclicals. Rostu Ravanan, the ED and CFO of Mindtree, joins in now. Hi, Mr. Ravanan. Thanks very much for joining in today. First, wanted to start by talking about what the rupee appreciation will do to Mindtree's margins, sir. Can you just explain to us what your guidance for FY15 would look like on the margins, considering the appreciation that we've seen on the rupee recently?
Of course, but maybe before that, I can give you like a quick update. In April, we had announced a resolution pending shareholder approval for issue of bonus shares. That process got completed on Friday. Happy to announce that the shareholders approved all the resolutions that were put for postal ballot. So the bonus issue is now approved. Shareholders should get the credit on or before 9th June in their demat accounts and start trading those shares on or before 14th June. So since that news was sort of literally hot off the press, wanted to start with that. Coming to the question that you asked, as an export-oriented company, usually an appreciating rupee hurts our margins. Our sensitivity is about 35 to 40 basis points impact for every 1% change in the rupee. As you've seen that the rupee has appreciated ever since the election news started coming out. We are reasonably okay immediately for the quarter. We have certain amount of hedges already booked. But for the full year, let us see. But like I said, an appreciating rupee hurts margins to the extent of 35 to 40 basis points. However, we think we will be able to offset a reasonable portion of it through operational improvements, through pricing improvements, through revenue growth. So let's see where the rupee ends for the full year before we comment on the margins. What we are confident of is that excluding the impact of the rupee, operationally margin should be stable for this year, because like we announced at the beginning of the year, we expect the revenue growth this year to be very, very strong. We are confident we will meet the industry average growth rates for this year.
Okay. How much of this 35 to 40 basis points impact on the margins can be offset on account of operational efficiencies? And what would be the key triggers, and how much can...
To a large extent, it will depend on how much is the change in the rupee. A reasonable appreciation, like I said, should be able to get offset through some of the improvements I mentioned. The levers we have under our control, partly around the employee pyramid, partly around improving utilization. And beyond all of that, I think the biggest margin lever we have is revenue growth. Like I mentioned, revenue momentum for this year continues to be extremely strong. So a reasonable amount of appreciation we think we'll be able to take in our stride. We also currently don't anticipate the rupee to have a very sharp appreciation very quickly as well. So let's see how the rupee shapes up before we're able to comment on the impact on our own margins.
So in Q4, sir, your average rupee rate was closer to 61.7. That's in the Q4 average rupee rate. So we've already seen a fair amount of appreciation. Very roughly in this quarter, as things stand now, what could be the impact on the margins, just purely on account of currency?
I think for this quarter, currency will probably be a smaller impact because, like I said, we also have a good amount of hedges for this quarter, more than about 55-60 million of hedge at a very good rate of 62 plus for this quarter. So that should help mitigate a part of the impact for this quarter. I think for this quarter, our anticipation is the bigger headwind could be the visa cost that we incurred in this quarter. We incurred a little more than $2 million of visa cost for this quarter. So that probably is likely to be a bigger impact. We think we should be able to mitigate the impact of the currency. And again, like I explained in the beginning of this quarter when we announced the results in the middle of April, revenue momentum for this quarter is extremely strong. We expect that we will do a higher revenue growth in Q1 compared to the revenue growth we had in Q4. So that should some extent also help mitigate the impact of the rupee appreciation.
What about the high-tech segment, Mr. Ravanan? Do you expect it to formidably recover in FY15?
It's clearly on a path of recovery. We had a small amount of growth last year, and it started off on a very good note for this current quarter. Pipeline in that segment also continues to be strong. We are winning a fair amount of large opportunities from our customers. So this year promises to be a good year for the high-tech segment.
Okay.
What will be the impact of the actual visa cost on your margins this quarter?
So like I said, we incurred, I think, a little more than $2 million of visa costs for all the applications we filed in April. And like I said, the actual profitability impact, we will know by the end of the quarter once the revenue is frozen.
Okay. Mr. Ravanan, I just want to focus on another piece of news which might not be that relevant, but the company is looking to spin off one of your startup ventures. Could you just take us through what the plan is on that, the reason behind it, what the startup venture comprises of?
We created an initiative in Mindtree a few years back to encourage innovation within the company. We encourage Mindtree minds to come up with ideas, and if after the review internally we find that the idea has a good business potential, almost like a VC kind of initiative, then Mindtree funds that idea, bring that ideas to a certain stage, and once that idea proves itself as a concept, then we evaluate whether that idea has future potential internally to be part of Mindtree, or maybe in some cases that idea can flourish better if it's outside Mindtree. So following that process, we came across one internal initiative which is in the cloud related area, virtualization for the cloud related area, and we found that that entity will have greater success if it's outside Mindtree. So having generated some amount of proof of concept validation, already has a few customers, reached a certain critical mass, and therefore we are spinning off that idea along with the intellectual property and the team to a new entity. Mindtree will continue to be invested in that entity. There will be representatives from Mindtree overseeing the progress of that entity, but that entity will also chart its own course. It will seek external funding. The team behind that idea could also invest their personal money. So now it will be incubated and spun off into an independent entity.
Very quickly, sir, you all have brought the prominent deal maker Manisha Girotra as the board member of the company. So is acquisition likely for the company in this financial year?
I don't think any one board member changes our strategy. Our philosophy for acquisitions has to be always linked to the business, our strategy, areas where our portfolio is weak. So I don't think any one board member is going to immediately change any of our acquisition priorities.
Okay, fair enough, Mr. Ravanan. We leave it at that. Thank you very much for joining in. So that's Mindtree talking about the impact of a rupee, which is appreciating. Maybe some amount of around 35 to 40 basis points impact is what they would see on the margins if in case there is a 1% appreciation on the rupee, but it will be countered by possibly operational efficiencies and some amount of pricing power as well, as highlighted by the management. But let's